Thank you for joining us for our third speaker of our Gear Up speaker series. Today we have Dr. Josie Ahlquist. She is a digital leadership educator discovering the intersection of social communication and leadership capacity. As a speaker, author, and researcher, she believes in challenging how we think about social media for building community, social change, and leadership development, as well as a tool to empower college students to be purpose-driven. As an international leadership speaker, Josie trained thousands of students and educational professionals. Her vision is to provide a digital remix on how to inspire leaders of the 21st century. She was named to the top 50 must-read higher education technology blogs by EdTech in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. Publishing in a number of journals and books, including the Handbook for Student Affairs, Journal of Leadership Studies, New Directions for Student Services, and New Directions for Student Leadership. So please join me in welcoming Josie Ahlquist.
All right. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be joining with you today. I've actually been able to visit your campus twice as a guest speaker, so I can envision myself with you all now while we connect all virtually. So I'm logging in from my home office in Los Angeles, California, and I am not alone in my stay-at-home quarantine journey. So you may hear our rescue dogs greet some unwanted packages at the door, or my partner who's working in the background. But again, this is such a treat to be joining with you today. At this point, I'm going to be sharing my slides, and I'll make sure to keep the chat up. There's a couple times where we're going to do a little bit of interaction, which if we stay a small group, we can do either through video and audio, turning your audio on, or we can just do completely through the chat. I'm prepared for either one. And if for any reasons, as we know, technology is not perfect. If my computer decides to go take a nap or I lose internet, I will be back as soon as I can. So just always feel like I've got to give that little piece there. So, okay. So Seth, just give me a heads up that you're good seeing my just one slide, hopefully on the screen. And I'll know that we're good to go.
Looks great.
Okay, awesome. So since about 2013, I have committed my, well, life's work sounds really dramatic, but my time and energies to looking at what social media and leadership looks like, especially for teens and young adults, but that's also extended all the way up to campus leaders like a president or a dean. And so what I'm sharing with you today isn't just these thoughts and ideas that I have about how you as a college student, or even I know we have some administrators sitting in, can use your social media platforms with a clear purpose. But it's actually from the result of some research that I've done over the years, a curriculum, one could say, some guiding direction for you as you think about where to go from here. So no surprise, you can find me on all of the places of the internet, from my website to social media locations. I'm pretty much at Josie Ahlquist on all the platforms. And then I use the hashtag no matter where I go in my home office or when I do get to travel, for folks to use if they want to share anything out, like on Twitter or LinkedIn, using the hashtag DigLead. Okay, so I want to get us grounded a little bit, thinking about through the leadership lens of what is our purpose. I know I'm not trying to cause any kind of anxiety on this afternoon, but we have to get started to be super clear in our purpose as we start thinking about the platforms that we want to use to make an impact. And so if we remove sometimes that intimidating word or concept of what's your life purpose, we can first start to think about just what your story is. What happened in your past to get to you where you are today? And hopefully by the end, I'm going to give you some skills, some ideas, or what I like to call some nuggets that you can think about how you can plug digital leadership into your daily practices. And this session definitely is not about the latest technology tutorials or how to get more Instagram followers or understanding all the latest challenges on TikTok. But it is to get you thinking about why you're on certain platforms, what you do, who you connect with, and why, and then going forward from there in a leadership lens. So as I promised, there'll be a little interaction. And why don't we first warm up the chat since we're just getting going? And I find social media actually is very triggering in a way of emotions. We feel strongly about certain tools in a certain way, from our feelings about Facebook to why we absolutely might love TikTok. So tell me in the chat what platform or platforms right now that you absolutely love, you use them daily, and you tell other people about them even. So take a few seconds to just drop those in. And again, we're not doing any kind of like spell check on here. So it's okay if you do acronyms or anything that makes sense for you. All right, so we've got Instagram and Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok, sometimes Instagram. All right, Cole shares TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. And it is common for us to have multiple platforms that we tend to go, even expanding into some maybe group communication tools like Microsoft Teams. We can even put those under defined as potentially social media. Okay. Technologically challenged. Well, I appreciate that reflection. That is A-okay. We can be aware of that as well. Okay, my next question that I want to hear in the chat, what is at least one platform that you just give the big old thumbs down to, that it is a big dislike in your book? And Facebook. Okay. That platform being around as long as it has since 2005 definitely comes with some weight. Twitter, Snapchat, Twitter. And it would be interesting to go back to see if you've got similarities. Maybe the platform that you really like and love is also on your dislike list. There can be things that we like about platforms and immediately also dislike in other ways. And so going forward, I just want you to think about what platforms that you're currently on and aware of and how you feel about them. I've got a lot of Facebook, a lot of Twitter. And then we could also get into the whys that we dislike those, and not asking you potentially to reveal that, but having, again, that concept in your mind of why, knowing that we've had real experiences on these tools, like lived experiences. What happens IRL in real life happens online. There is not a digital divide. Those things that happen on the internet have a real impact of how they affect us or others. And sometimes we get a choice and we just choose not to use a tool. But sometimes maybe our other communities are involved with them, or our campuses. So we need to show up there. And so we continue to navigate how to basically be a human in the digital age. And on top of that, we add on within the COVID-19 pandemic. So as we think about some skills for college students looking to be digital leaders, well, you could take it as face value of these tools have reach globally. And so if you could send out a message to the world to say, this is what I want to be known for, start to think about what that would be. And again, that might be quite intimidating, and maybe you don't want the whole world to know everything about you. So again, I hope you'll take away just a couple things within your spheres of influence and your communities that will make that impact. So I'm going to share with you 6 pillars of digital student leadership. And as I shared earlier, I've been doing research for a number of years now. You know, we get to call it research because then we get to publish it. Some other people would call it being curious or like getting into people's business. But basically, I was able to take my dissertation where I really looked at how college students at 2 different universities were having lived experiences online and their reflections to figure out what are maybe some missing pieces that I could help educate to improve usage, as well as use what they were doing well in digital spaces to teach to other students. And again, my goal is for you to take away just one thing. So there might be just one part of these 6 pillars that really makes sense for you now, and that will be a win in my book. Okay, so let's first start with digital identity. This is a term, in case it is not familiar to you. It's basically everything that you are posting, from what you post up on Snapchat to a blog forum to Reddit to a YouTube comment. It's also what other people are posting about you. You know, my mom loves to tag me and stuff on Facebook, and that would also be part of my digital identity, as it's being related back to myself. And then what is searchable? The internet and tools like YouTube are powerful search platforms related to not just our names, but our likeness and our face. And when we use the word digital identity, and when we think about leadership, that could start to get a little blurry. Because when we look at a term like identity on its own, that becomes quite personal and informative of who we actually are. Identity, you could think of things like your where you grew up, your family, titles that you call yourself, your background, where you were born, all kinds of different descriptors that you would say inform your identity by your own choice. And so then when we fold that into social media, and if you were to look at someone like myself, I like to use myself as a guinea pig often and ask who I am, a stranger could start to piece some things together just based on what I post out on social media. So from me having animals to maybe I'm an aunt or I'm a mom. It looks like I have a graduation and I'm a speaker on stage. So you could start to piece things together by what I post. But you also, if you started to dig deeper, and if you wonder, well, who is Josie Ahlquist? Some of these things I can't explain, from my background to who's important in my life to where I grew up and how that informs my identity. So digital identity, some of it, again, is sometimes screen value only. And again, Google sometimes does the work for us if you were to search someone's name. Now, if you were to search my name, and usually if we were in person, we might do a little fun activity right now. So there's a question from Sept: is the government really monitoring everything that we post? Well, if you want to maybe modify that question, every single platforms owns everything that we post. And some may not fully have the say about what they're going to do with those posts. So especially in platforms like Facebook, we see a lot of folks reading into those terms and conditions and making other choices for their usage of that. The government has probably overview over everything, including what I'm saying on my screen right now. So if you were to search my name on Google, there's going to be one YouTube account that comes up that at first may not make sense of why this show called Epic Rap Battles of History would show up in my Google search results. They have been around for a number of years now with billions of views, millions of subscribers, putting characters against each other in some battles. Well, one of the co-creators, called LLOYD, I met when I was a college student just a few years ago. And then a few years later, we got married. And this is before YouTube, before you even could record stuff on your phones, especially not videos, definitely not photos. And the video that always comes up very first for me in my video search results is a video that I was actually in of rap battles. And I'm not sure if y'all can hear this. I'm not going to play the whole thing, so you don't have to worry about that. But that one has, I think, over 16 million views, and I am probably never going to get that many views on one of my YouTube videos. And I also did not realize the outfit they would be putting me in, but I think I rocked it pretty well. And of course, I got to make that choice to be in that video, and again, proud of that series. But knowing that we don't always get a choice about how our name populates, what's offered first on the first page versus the second page. But when I teach you about digital reputation, there's definitely things that you can do to have control over those search results. But for now, the message and the nugget that I want to leave you with is to know thyself online. Do some digging of your own. Know what happens when you search for yourself, and not just on Google or on YouTube, but all the different platforms, and just to have that small bit of information. The second piece of knowing thyself online is then thinking about your presence in all the platforms that you're choosing to spend time on, and if your current presence is actually aligned with how you want to be known in the world. And as we get into talking about digital leadership, we'll start to evolve that. Okay, digital wellness is the second pillar of digital leadership's skills for college students, and just sharing a little bit of some of your dislikes about social media. That was just one layer of digital wellness, is social media. But we also have all types of technologies that influence digital wellness. And you could ask the question, does your technology right now work for you or against you? And so I would love, just in the chat again, let me know if you think you've figured out some ways to make tech work for you, or today, at least, does it feel a little bit like it's working against you? All right, so figuring out some ways to make it work for teaching. Great. Well, I know for me, there's been periods of time where I've had to stop and reflect about my use of tech, especially the time spent on certain platforms. Mildred says, both for me and against me, I am overwhelmed. I hear you and I see you. You see, both what we do on social and how we use technology, none of these apps are going to tell us it's time to log off, to take care of yourselves and maybe get some non-screen time. Even on Apple phones, and I'm pretty sure Android too, you can track just your mobile phone usage. And especially when I was traveling often, it would get pretty high. And so what I want you to know is that we want to look at digital wellness not through a lens of judgment or making you feel bad or shameful about it. Almost like you look at any goal that you would have, you would be aware, reflect, and then make some pivots from there. Before I jump into this next slide, I would love to hear in the chat anything that anyone is doing that you feel like is working for you to put just a couple measures in place for making technology work for you. So one thing that I did, and this was like in a really busy period of time, I think I was probably trying to meet a book deadline, is I would put bumpers on each part of my day when I would wait as long as I could to look at my phone, or when I would not be able to look at my phone at the end of the day. I also have a friend who did this with Twitter even during this time. She doesn't look at Twitter anytime after 9 p.m. So sometimes we can do experiments too to see how those affect how we feel. Because for me, the reason why I try to hold off on looking at my phone until, like, let's say after I have breakfast, it gives me a little bit more space to settle in, as well as if there maybe is anything negative in the news or in my emails that it's not immediately impacting before I've actually left the bed. So in addition to what we're actually logging in and doing on technology tools, and I completely realize with online courses and online service delivery, we are pulled into these platforms more than ever. And that is also why we have to put some maybe bumper cars around some of our technology tool usage. But the other part of being a digital leader is having an awareness of why you are posting what you are. Both emotions can get caught up into maybe us quickly replying to some kind of Twitter thread about something we don't agree with, or posting something and maybe not even reading the article through and through. So as you think about being a digital leader, we also, that its definition has nothing to do with the amount of likes that you have, subscribers, connections. It's starting to tap into a desire where maybe the reason why you're doing what you're doing on social has some deeper meanings that have to do with belonging, making a difference, and maybe it's to be remembered. And I know that's a lot to think about when you just want to post something on Instagram really quickly. But as we think about bigger concepts of leadership, we'll start to think about some of those bigger considerations. And so the nugget, the hope that I would have for you in digital wellness is either if you write it down or you just kind of know in the back of your mind, what are your terms and conditions for online communication? You could also call this a user care manual. This could be down to, if someone comments something to me, on Instagram, am I going to delete that comment because I feel like it goes against my values? If I have an experience on one platform, when is it that I'm going to walk away? And those are all small ways that you can take technology tools back to work for you. I'm seeing a few other ideas in the chat about technology use around time, which I think is a great idea. So one lesson I also learned is I was trying to take tech back to work for me is I downloaded this app. Oh gosh, I think I even forgot what it's called. Method or Moment, I think. It's got like this purple icon, and it said that it would not only track, but it would kind of coach you along the way, giving reinforcements and reminders about how often you were opening your phone, using your phone, and on certain platforms. So I was on the app for a few weeks and I was doing pretty good because I'm fairly competitive. So I thought an app like this that kind of gave that coaching would really do it for me. Well, I soon found myself slipping and kind of going into those shame spirals of it kept telling me, you've opened your phone X amount of times. It kept telling me that I was like making a mistake over and over with my goals. And so it was almost doing the opposite. So no, there's lots of tools out there that can help you with tracking. I have found some of the most powerful are just our own human devices. And again, if the goal is to know technology after 10:30, seeing if you can put your own parameters in place in order to do that. So for example, you could go and you could turn off the internet, or you could go put your phone in a timeout area that it's going to be further away from you. Or maybe 10:30 is the time that you start to lay down and you start to read a book. What are other things that you can start to blend in again to make that work for you? Okay, one more of these and I'll open it up for a little question, and then I'll do the rest of the 6 pillars. So digital community, I have been a huge champion of looking at social media through the intent to build community. Communities can be built on any single platform. It just has to be an intent and a philosophy of it. And especially since this spring, we were forced to remove ourselves from our campus environments or our high schools or our work environments, even some of our family and friends that we were removed from, we started to have to creatively look at maybe Zoom birthday parties like I had to do in April, or maybe your family started a group me chat, and many other pieces that are out there. But you still may wonder, those are some tight-knit communities maybe you have. There could be the concern of, well, does social media actually bring us together? Does a Zoom birthday party actually make a difference and can versus something that's done face-to-face? Or do some of these tools have the possibility of pulling us apart? And again, right now we're living in a fairly extreme period of time. Overall, my philosophy is social media is not perfect. In one thread, you can see all kinds of connections and community happening. And then the next post that you see can be outright harm and harassment. And unfortunately, the way the internet works, it folds it all together. But again, when you go into these tools with the intent to build community and make connections, if you bring that back to think about what are my values and what do I want to be known for, and coupling that on to what we know about online movements. And so even the late spring, early summer with the momentum of Black Lives Matter and the unification of voices both online and into the streets, taking to lots of tools and tactics to get out a very specific and clear message. And there's lots of other movements that are happening or that were started in digital spaces. But we're also starting to look to platforms that maybe were created for one thing, like let's say Discord servers or channels. We've seen campuses start to create these to build digital communities for students from beyond not just gaming, but into recreation and social. But how even, let's say you are on what is that? Animal Crossing. I've heard of people connecting with people they've never met before on a game like Animal Crossing, and a true connection happens. But again, within social media, we can look to platforms within these tools that are built for groups. And especially if you're tuning in as a student leader or you want to be one, part of an organization, not only to get out information and education, but you want to build a community amongst members and its leaders, there's tools out there that you can do that. And we could also define those as being social and community based. So looking at things like Facebook groups, the Discord server, Slack, Mighty Networks is another one I'm a big fan of, using Twitch with the intent to build community. LinkedIn is another, and it sounds like you're a Microsoft Teams, so Teams are an option for some folks as well. And then we have group messaging platforms that allow us to connect even around the globe. These are all a few of those. Padlet is another one that's interesting. I know we've got at least one instructor in here. I use Padlet for my online courses, and using that as a discussion board, my students have really enjoyed. And maybe you want to make your community very visual, but maybe it's just in a chat app. That would be Marco Polo would be a great option for you. And I'm also seeing campuses and students using their learning management system, their LMS, so that might be Canvas or Blackboard, in order to create spaces for us to find each other and to connect, especially in between opportunities like we have here today, that takes it out of Zoom and into just organic interaction. So thinking about digital communities, we start to have a consistent theme that you'll start to hear me talk about is what's that impact that you want to make in any of those communities? And does your social media use and how you show up in those spaces actually amplify that? So I do see a question, and this is perfect timing as I take a pause from before I go into the next three pillars, how do high school seniors make the shift from high school friends to college friends on social media? Any suggestions and strategies to share? That is a great question. So, I really encourage, as we think about digital identity, it's not like you need to completely dump your old platforms and start anew, unless that is just a mental shift that you absolutely need to do. You may need to intentionally look into campus hashtags, or you can even search like on Instagram or on Twitter and even on TikTok for the name of Indiana University Southeast or other relevant like words, branded hashtags that might be used, and then you can find current students there. I definitely do wish in college courses that faculty would make it an option if students not only want to share their emails or phone numbers to make study groups, that students could choose to share, hey, this is my Twitter, this is my Instagram, find me there. As you know, that those direct messaging platforms can be very, very helpful for quick communication and not where you're actually posting on your public feed. So, and again, if you're a student leader joining in or one that wants to be one, how can you make sure you're sharing each other's info when you have your meetings, when you have your meetups, and or to at least state like, hey, like I'm on Instagram, find me there, or whatever platform that might be for you. So that would be my thought about that. I think hopefully what you're getting from my message so far is now you're in college. Not only are you taking courses that will continue to be more directed into your career path, but how you use social, those stakes and that ask is also going to be increasing. So we are asking you to see yourself as a leader, whether you're in a leadership role or not, and how you use social media. That it's not about being an adult or being professional. It is about embracing these tools and the impact that you want to make. So in high school or middle school, you may have heard messages about social media that were maybe like talking down to you or made you feel bad, or it was like a whole big list of what not to do. My list that I have on the screen is all the things that I want you to do, and hopefully you'll get inspired from that. Okay, any other questions before I dig into my favorite pillar? And I think y'all will enjoy it as well. All right, we will also have time at the end for questions where I will jump out of my slides and we can do some interaction through voice and video. Okay, so digital reputation, you may also hear this as digital branding, digital presence. The big difference between your digital presence and your digital reputation is what you're consuming versus what you're actually creating. To start to have a reputation that is intentional is going to take you telling your story. And so I'd like to share a little bit of my story. So I was not always a speaker and consultant. I started my career. Well, I kind of joke that I started working on a college campus the day I moved onto campus because I fell in love with college, and through great mentors guided me to a career path to work in higher education. Well, for about 12 years I did. About the last year and a half, though, I started to feel this itch and this need to be something bigger than just serving my campus. And so like any achiever and type A person, I was like, well, what else can I add to my life while I still have this other job? And so it was leap year that year. And so I decided, well, I'm going to blog every day of leap year. And this was a Tumblr page called Josieville. And every day I blogged as just a reflective tool. It wasn't to get shared a lot of places. I'm sure even reading this on the screen, there's lots of grammatical errors, but it was my own discernment and reflection process about where I was in my life. And I wanted to publicly do that through a platform like Tumblr. Well, a year later, I eventually decided to, and at that point, I also had started my doctoral degree, and I decided to leap into doing that full time. And again, like the type A high achiever competitor person that I am, I knew not having a job and just going to school full time, I wanted something else to keep me grounded. And so I created a new blog on WordPress, also just with my name, Josie Ahlquist, and I was going to blog every single day for 50 days. Now, I would not recommend blogging a whole bunch of days in a row, no matter the scenario. But what the practice gave me is confidence in myself as a writer, getting to know the platform, and sharing my story. Toward the end of those 50 days, I started to blog about everything I was doing in school at the time. So even this post of a screenshot here was a Blackboard discussion post that I reshared on my blog. And that is what started to get my name out there. I never went to school or left my full-time work thinking I'm going to start a speaking and consulting business. But by telling my story and sharing what even I was learning in the classroom, that is what resulted. And eventually, that is what resulted in my website, which even looks more updated from today on the screen, because websites are never, never done. So this is not a message for you to think about, oh my goodness, one more thing, I need to have my own website and blog. I want you to start to look at all the daily things that you do, the small impacts and the stories that you have, and how you can start to sprinkle those in and how you use social media. Because I bet if you were to look at all of your feeds, or maybe even just one platform, we would start to see some things that are all unique to you. And one exercise that I love collages, and like January 1st, when you're making those vision boards, well, that's what I'm doing, at least on January 1st. You could do something like that with your social media channels, from what your YouTube page looks like to your Snapchat to Pinterest. This is basically my collage of my online presence, which again has a couple things that I need to update. If you're a visual person like me, and this relates back to digital identity a little bit, our cover photos express a message and an emotion about ourselves, even down to then our bios. What is the message we're communicating and sharing with the world from what we're sharing in our About section? And so I grew up in Wyoming, so I know branded has a double meaning, but it should not be painful. It should be done with style. It should feel like it is you. So as you think about whether you're a first-year student or you are planning for some big career change, is to look at these tools to make them work for you in that digital reputation for yourself. And that's thinking about claiming your name on the platforms that you want to be on clearly. Most of these platforms also have some kind of profile photo, some visual component where you get to make the choice about what your photo is going to be. It does not need to be a professionally done, Instagram worthy photo, but it should be clear and it should look like you. And then a few tips about building your bio. Again, every single tool has sections where you can add a little bit about yourself, even on Instagram, all the way into LinkedIn. So, and these are probably suggestions that you could also take into writing a cover letter, to working on your resume, but especially on social. What's the quick value proposition? Why would, based on what someone sees on your Twitter profile, what's the value that potentially you're offering for someone to connect with you? If you know that you want to use this platform in a career-related way, especially like on LinkedIn, are you using some industry keywords that's going to help with people finding you? Also, just like on resumes and cover letters, we want to use action words. So even in our bios and our about sections, those things really come to life. And it's also more than okay on social to show some personality, even in your bio. And then finally is spelling. I have found misspellings in Twitter bios of college presidents. So sometimes these things happen, right? But take a double look next time when you update one of your profiles. Now, for college students, especially as you're getting grounded into your coursework, getting involved, looking at your presence with a purposeful impact, if you already start to set your gaze out beyond college, these are the 3 tools that I would suggest that you start to invest in and explore. And that's Twitter, LinkedIn, and some kind of longer form communication platform. And for me, that is blogging, and that's what that W is. There's many other tools that you could pick to tell your story. So pick those platforms, enhance your bio, and then of course, always get feedback. I would be more than happy of any of you to reach out to me to say, hey, Josie, would you mind looking at my LinkedIn page real quick and let me know if I'm on the right track? It's just like getting feedback from your resume. My opinion may be different from someone else on campus, and that's okay. You can kind of pick and choose what you'd like to take. And so talking about LinkedIn and having a little bit of advice, my joke is that I swear LinkedIn should be hiring me to be their #1 champion to college students as well as campus executives, because it tends to be a tool that overall a lot of people overlook. And it is a lot more powerful, especially the last few years than you may have realized. And there's lots of customization options and additions that you can add into your profile, thinking strategically, not just the visuals, but what your byline is, and then your about section. And now you'll see here actually that I used to have my about section was written in 3rd person. And recently I transitioned that to be more 1st person in a storytelling manner that gave a little bit of a tour of my background and why I work in higher education and do what I do. And I find that's resonating a lot more with myself, feeling connected even to my own profile. But again, as a best practice, I have seen both. Another reason why you might like LinkedIn, if you start digging in, is you actually get some data that could be really interesting for you. And a question I get a lot is, well, I want my page to be seen by, let's say, more recruiters or graduate schools. And so here's a couple quick things you can do to increase your profile views, which are, again, quite surface level, is update your picture or your cover photo or anything about your byline. Also, anytime that you post in the news feed, that's going to increase your profile views. And that's where the community and connections are definitely going to come from. And so when you look into your articles and activities, that also is going to give you information about how active you are on the platform. And now this example is from a few years ago, but I think it's still so very telling. I tell students, from the moment you step on campus, from the day after you graduate, you are given a secret sauce. And this can quickly go away, though, after you graduate. You get to put out to the world more often, and more people will receive it, that you're looking for help, that you're looking for guidance and mentorship and support. And so Naya did this her senior year. She was calling all recruiters before she graduated with a video resume. Again, this is another one of those nuggets that you could take, put it in your back pocket for when you're ready to do one of those. This thing was seen so many times and shared. It got all the way to the president of LinkedIn, or the CEO, who brought her on as an intern and eventually brought her on as a program associate into LinkedIn. And she actually blogged about that. And she's one I would suggest look up on LinkedIn and connect or follow with her. And then you can see those. She's wrote some blogs about that experience, about putting her story out there on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's one tool that you can tell your story, but there's lots of other ways you can do that too, in what I call a longer form method. Takes a little bit more time, but things like blogging, a portfolio, using video, all those are things that we can not just see on your resume or your LinkedIn page what you're doing, but we actually see you doing those. TikTok, that is it literally is storytelling. It's not just dancing and singing. There could be really cool ways that you could use that tool for branding and to upload your purpose. Another one I'm a big fan of, if you're looking for blogging, as I started with Tumblr, if I was to just start blogging today, I probably would do that on Medium, which is that green logo at the bottom. Okay, last two pillars in digital leadership skills for college students. And this one, of course, is all encompassing about all those skills. It's not just hanging out here in one pocket. It's incorporating all these different skills that I've been sharing so far. Each of you have a leadership capacity, an ability that you can reach up to. You just have to enact it and make that happen. You also have digital influence, both on and offline, that don't have to do with the number of likes and follows and shares, but knowing who your community and your audience is and tapping into that. Knowing what that capacity and power is to have an actual impact. And we could take this even out of social media. What's the impact that you want to have on email or the next Zoom call that you jump into? All those can be done with intentions. Because even outside of your role as a student or faculty or administrator, we can proudly take on the idea that we're role modeling behavior, from what we do physically on our phones when we're around other people, that role models, both good and bad, but also what we're doing out in digital spaces. And so you can think about who your role models are, and maybe they're aware of it and maybe they're not. Maybe these are celebrities, or maybe this is someone super close in your circles. Well, what if you could be that person to someone else? And then to them and to others, what's the message you would want to amplify? What do you want to role model for them? All those frustrations that you have with Twitter or Facebook, how can be the way that you use those tools that might pivot that platform just a little bit to make it a little bit more positive and purposeful? And for digital leadership, the takeaway is to put your passions in a digital purpose. For me, I didn't know it at the time, but by blogging, that was starting to amplify my story and honestly figuring out what my purpose was. But again, if I thought about these grand big plans, what was my 5-year and 10-year plan, or if I went in thinking I want to be a speaker, I want to be an influencer, that could have been quite overwhelming. And so just take it one post at a time and know that your purpose is going to change over time too, and that's okay. And so finally, in this pillars is digital decisions. And I shared earlier how in the past, you could have maybe been given messages about what you do on social media through a very black and white, wrong or right, personal or professional, success or fail equation. And we know that the internet is not black and white. It is very gray. And each tool has a lot of different contexts and even cultures to it. But we also know every post does come with weight. And whether in a private text message or a completely public thread on Twitter, that the world does operate in a very open source type of way. So even as you think back over all these years that you've been on technology and different social media applications, there may have been something that you could look back and say, yeah, I probably wish I would have done that differently. Even for me, sometimes there's emails or text messages that I was like, yep, I probably should have took a couple more breaths before I sent that. But the same to be on social media too. But the good news, especially from my research with teens and young adults, is for you to know that that was a mistake, to admit to it, and now moving forward, hopefully you've learned from it, is a really great sign of your own growth and capacity for leadership. Instead of the fear of what your next post is going to get you fired or ruin your life, the message I would leave with you is own it. Own all of it. what you text, what you put on TikTok, or what you submit in a course project in digital spaces. And we can bring that back to digital identity, our choices of posting, and where we choose to put ourselves that could end up in digital spaces. We have to own all of our lives. And so in close, I ask you, as you think about leadership, do you think your social media presence is helping? Or is there sometimes what you are doing is adding a whole lot of noise? And just reflective pieces, right? Not to say one is one and one is the other. Because at the end of the day, someday there will be a post that you put out, and it'll be the last time you're going to post on that platform. Maybe the platform goes away, or again, while we can drink all the water we want, someday we will move on from this world. And what do you want that final post to be? Will it be your friends and your family? Will it be some quote or message or any kind of meaning? And then we start to think about leadership way bigger than just a tool or what's trending today. And so this is what I would say, at least for now, would be a throwback photo. This is me and my mom in a creek back home in South Dakota. And I would say something kind of cheeky, like to crossing more creeks, oceans, and galaxies that bring us all closer to our true calling. But I'll tell you what, I'm also quite the negotiator, and I can't have it just one way and one post. And so I'm not sure if the audio will play in this, but this is the other one. Oops, this is the, oh, you know what? I don't know if this is going to play. I'm sorry. I am committed to trying. This would be the other post that I would want to share.
I like my dad, I like my cousins, I like my aunts, I like my Allisons, I like my mom, I like my sisters, I like my dad, I like my hair, I like my haircuts, I like my pajamas, I like my stuff, I like my rooms, I like my whole house. My whole house is great, I can do anything good. Yeah. I can do anything.
I could watch that video every single day as my morning pep talk. I know there are a lot of things going on in the world that don't seem so great, but as we go through our list of the things we are grateful for, that we're thankful for, I am thankful for tools like social media, that I can FaceTime with my niece that I've never met yet, that I can zoom into a experience like today with y'all across the country. And again, have hope that the world will continue to improve and sort itself out. So in the meantime, while we are offering connections, these are all the ways you can connect with me from Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on. So at this point, I'm going to pop out of my sharing. And we've got just a few minutes if there are any questions, or even we can have dialogue conversation. If anyone has comments, you could always turn your audio on, unmute yourself, and we can interact that way, or you can always drop it in the chat, whatever you are comfortable with. Oh, so there's a question in the chat. Is there pressure to limit length of blog posts due to shorter attention span of social media users? So I'm an interesting case study for this. If you happen to check out any of my blogs at josieahlquist.com, they are extremely long. They have always been long. This is actually intentional and aligns with my values and identity as an educator. I would prefer to create content that will last a long time, that it isn't just a quick splash and is short and not substantive. I am confident that this format probably has not always gotten posts as big of reach as they could. So best practice, potentially not, but I explain why it aligns with my values. Now, definitely we have shorter attention spans. So what I do in my blogs is I make sure that I include lots of formatting. I include lots of visuals, videos, and embeds of tweets or different graphics, knowing that individuals might not be able to take in everything at once. I like platforms like Medium because it'll actually tell you how long it's going to take you to read through this. And I've definitely set an article aside to read at a later time when I knew, okay, this is going to take me 15 minutes. I don't have that right now. Can't add that little add-on onto my blog. But what you will notice there are definitely bloggers out there that are writing very, very short, but more to just get those posts out. But they probably have a longer, a shorter longevity as far as what's called evergreen or not. Nice question. Any other questions? Is that bad? Only campus stuff comes up. Well, that is okay. I mean, better than some other things. One time I had a vice president run out of the room after we did a Google activity. So obviously something for her didn't go so well. So it's just at least to know what's out there. Most likely, like university websites probably were quite expensive, right, to build. And so their search, their SEO is probably quite high, and that's why that would probably come up first. Other places that I would suggest, as I was talking about in digital reputation, if you start to complete your profile on LinkedIn and start to contribute a little bit on Twitter, those two platforms will quickly also rise to when people search for you. If you don't want your Twitter account to show up on the first page of your results, let's say you don't even use it, I would just delete it because it will continue to show as a result. You also might be surprised that your Facebook link might show up as well as your Instagram. And so just keeping those in mind as you might want to change your privacy settings, again, knowing that it shows up in search results. Do people ask you to give them social media makeovers? That's fun. I do give feedback, especially to institutions. I call them audits because I find that there's things they're doing well and some wish list improvements. Honestly, my biggest, how do I say this nicely, challenge that I give to especially leaders is we're sharing a lot of content that's not accessible. So a lot of posters and graphics that we might create on Canva, we aren't adding alt text or descriptions to. And so then a screen reader can't actually consume that. But also some of the content just isn't user friendly to look at, even though if it was printed out and posted up, it would be a great flyer. So I do audits. I don't do makeovers. But I do reflective exercises with students to have y'all looking at your feeds to see if it aligns with your values. Fun questions. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I want to thank y'all for the invitation to be here. Such a treat. I'll make sure to share the slides so you can get those as well. And then I know the recording will be made available. And again, feel free to connect with me on socials and we can stay connected there.
Thank you so much for being with us, Josie. We enjoyed your presentation.
Awesome. My pleasure.